I'm not a lawyer, but have you heard that Jamaican dancehall DJ Vybz Kartel's unaliving conviction was recently overturned and now he's been set free? Well, I read through the entire case, so let me tell you what happened. I actually recapped this story a few months ago on my podcast, so I'm going to use those clips to give you the story. Vybz Kartel is a Jamaican artist. His conviction was overturned. A little bit of what I learned is that Jamaica's version of the Supreme Court goes up through the Brits. So they have this trial in Jamaica. They appeal it also in Jamaica. The defendants appeal again, and so it goes over to the Brits. And so this ruling actually came from the British court.
Judgment in the matter of Sean Campbell, Adidja Palmer, Kahira Jones, and Andre St. John against the King.
They are the ones who overturned it. These are the defendants: Sean Campbell, Adidja, I'm gonna say Palmer. That the Palmer person is actually Vybz Kartel. He's actually the musician. And then there's Kahira Jones, Andre St. John. I'm gonna give you context about the crime first. There was a guy named Clive Lizard Williams. His nickname was Lizard. Lizard and a man named Lamar Chow were given some guns by Vybz Kartel. He had given them a deadline in which they needed to return the guns back to him. 8 p.m. on August 14, 2011. Time came and they didn't return the guns. And so it is alleged as a consequence that he told them to come to his house. When they came, then he attacked them. Lamar Chow gets away. Lizard was never seen or heard from again after that day. That's what they said happened. Jamaica don't come get me. That's just what they said. Chow gets away and he goes to the police. So the police come to Vybz Kartel's house, and when they get there, they say that they smell disinfectant. The whole backyard had been destroyed. The interior of the house, they set it on fire. They never find a body. They eventually arrest all of the men, including Vybz Kartel, including the musician. As a part of the investigation, the police officers get phones, obviously. They say that on these phones, there's some communications that prove their story. I'm not sure exactly what they found on the phones, but that is a part of the document, that there were some phones. So the trial happens. They present all the evidence that they have, and they end up convicting all but one of those defendants for the crime of murder. Now, here is why Vybz Kartel appealed the decision.
There occurred a series of incidents involving the jury.
There was a first jury incident in which one of the jurors, Juror X, had some kind of encounter with one of the attorneys. The judge does his investigation. Everybody feels like, no, it just was kind of a coincidence, kind of happenstance, not a big deal. So the judge rules, okay, not a big deal, we can keep going. So that one is squashed. The second juror incident happens a little bit later.
The jury was reduced to 11 members after a juror was discharged almost 8 weeks into the trial.
It was juror number 11. She has a son who is incarcerated. She goes up to see her son, and she runs into one of the defendants while she's going to see her son at the jail. She sees him, talks to her son, it's fine. When she returns to go see her son again, her son mentions, hey, yo, when I was in the jail, Vybz Kartel, they had approached me a little bit. Juror 11 freaks out, and she's like, I'm scared for my son. What if they do something to my son? She goes and tells the judge, literally says in here that she's hysterical, breaking down. So the judge is like, I'm not even gonna ask no more questions. We're just gonna take you off of the case. Yeah. Shortly after that, forewoman goes to the judge's chambers.
On the final day of the trial, it was brought to the judge's attention that a member of the jury, who will be referred to as Juror X,
from that first incident,
had attempted to bribe other members of the jury.
Juror X, he's been bribing us with money. So this happens, and the forewoman doesn't immediately go to tell the judge. Instead, she starts asking all the other jurors if Juror X has also tried to bribe them. They all say yes. After she asks everybody, she goes and tells the judge, this is happening.
The judge questioned the jury forewoman, who stated that Juror X had offered bribes to each of the other jurors to acquit the appellants. The judge asked counsel for the prosecution and the defense if the trial could continue.
Judge is like, they've already released one juror. Can't have less than 10. So if they release this juror, they now don't have a complete jury, so they have to start all over, and it is the last day of the trial. They are about to give it to them to deliberate.
It would not have been possible only to discharge Juror X, because under the Jury Act, a trial for murder cannot continue with fewer than 11 jurors. The judge decided to proceed with his summing up and gave a direction to the jury reminding them of their function.
Basically says, just remember that when you are deliberating, you can only think about the facts that were presented. You can't think about anything else. You got to think about what you saw in the court. He retires them to deliberate. They go back at 3:42 p.m. At 5:35 p.m., the forewoman says, hey, we all can agree. It's 10-1. You know, in America, you need unanimous. But over there, apparently, you can have a majority rule. The attorney and the judge agrees. In order for us to use the majority ruling, you have to deliberate for a certain period of time, and we haven't reached that time yet. So go back and deliberate some more. 30 minutes later, 6:08, the forewoman comes back and she's like, hey, it's 10-1. And they're like, oh, okay, it's time now.
The jury returned at 6:08 p.m. and by a majority of 10-1 convicted all 4 appellants of the deceased's murder. A 5th defendant was unanimously acquitted.
Mind you, as soon as they wrap and they get found guilty, Juror X gets arrested for bribing the jurors, because that's a crime.
Juror X was immediately arrested and was later convicted of attempting to pervert the course of justice.
There's one more thing that happens. Apparently, the rule in Jamaica, the jurors cannot separate until they come to a decision. They don't put you in a hotel in Jamaica. They would have just had to stay in the chambers deliberating. So when he retired them at 3:42, they was going to be stuck. And so what their version of the Supreme Court is saying, you can't have jurors thinking about traffic, thinking about daycare, thinking about whatever, still expect them to be able to fully deliberate and give like the care and thought that is necessary for a trial.
That the trial judge departed from standard practice in inviting the jury to retire to consider their verdict so late in the day, putting undue pressure on them to reach a verdict.
They're basically like, you put undue pressure on them, and that also is unfair, so throw this whole thing out. So that's what happened. Okay, so after the conviction was overturned, it was up to the courts to determine if they were going to retry Vybz Kartel. And they concluded that the interest of justice does not require a new trial to be ordered. The court said that there was sufficient evidence to suggest that Kartel would not be able to complete a potentially longer sentence if there were to be a retrial. Last year, a sworn medical affidavit from Kartel's private doctor notified authorities that his Graves' disease and heart condition were getting worse, and that if he did not get surgery soon, it could be fatal. All of that led to Vybz Kartel being released.